Welcome, everybody, to today's session of Fireside Chat by CCOF in partnership with Freshworks. The topic for the day is customer-led growth, and it's a very interesting topic for today, especially during these times. Our main guest for today is David Jackson. He is the CEO of thecustomer.co, which helps B2B SaaS companies profitably win, sustain, and grow their chosen customers. David is named as a global top 25 customer success influencer in 2020, and he works along with CEOs and executive teams to help deliver, profitable growth through customer success. He was incidentally one of the original founders and the CEO of ClickTools, one of the first SaaS-based companies in the United Kingdom. He's also a sought-after speaker, and he's authored many books which have garnered excellent reviews from the C-level community and top leaders. But however, his latest book, which is the topic itself for today, Customer-Led Growth, and How Do You Build a B2B SaaS Company, which was published recently in September, has garnered rave reviews across the SaaS community, across serial entrepreneurs, your CEOs, etc. And that's specifically what we're going to talk about today. Joining him, we have MD, as he's fondly known as. He's the founder of this forum, CCOF. He's a IIT Madras, Michigan State University, and Stanford Business School alum. And he's been in the industry for over 30 years and is an industry veteran. He started off with Dell as one of their MDs for India, and has always been in the customer experience space and has been a pioneer in the contact center industry for the country. Today, he's a passionate customer experience advocate, and therefore has started this forum, and therefore having these wonderful conversations. With that, over to you, MD.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction, Ranil. And David, welcome. If you can just switch to the next slide, Ranil. Yeah. Yeah. Firstly, congratulations, David, for your latest book.
Thank you.
I went through this. I read actually cover to cover over the last 3 days. It's incredible. I mean, it's like a ready manual for a founder of a SaaS company, or for that matter, a CEO of a SaaS company. It's a ready manual. You've actually kind of spelled out everything in it. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, if you try to talk about everything you've mentioned in the book, I think it'll take us 2 or 3 days. So what I'm going to try and do is talk a little bit about some of the key things I kind of caught in the book and just leave it there for people to listen to us and hopefully go and get themselves a copy of this book. I would strongly recommend it for all SaaS companies, all SaaS company leaders, especially given that Freshworks is a SaaS company which is sponsoring this event. It's just fantastic. So congratulations once again. So
thank you.
How did the idea of writing this book come about? I mean, what kind of, I mean, you've been in this field, you've kind of been there, done that. Why did you decide to write a book?
Well, just before I get onto that, can I also add my thanks to Renil and for the Freshworks team? Great organization. Someone I know well has joined them as VP of Customer Success in the last 6 months or so, Disha Gosalio. So if you need to know about customer success, there's no better place to turn than Disha. So thank you to Freshworks first. What led me to write the book? I'm the sort of person, MD, that writes to think. I had this set of ideas that I've been working on with a few different companies, and some which I'd put into practice at ClickTools many years ago. And you've got these ideas, and it's like they're there, but they don't fit together properly. They don't make sense. So I wrote the book actually for no other reason than to try to put some structure around it and to find the ways that they really did join up. So that's the main reason I did it. I also thought I'd got something useful to share, but the main reason was just to try to structure some thoughts and ideas. Because this is the sort of thing that I do regularly in the work that I do with coaching and consulting with SaaS companies. So actually to have it worked out, it was a big help for that as well.
Cool, that's very good. I mean, it's come together wonderfully, actually. And that's what I want to start with. So one of the kind of threads which runs right through the book is customer success and creating customer success. I think that's what you really kind of use right across the book. So what is it, David, and how especially do you measure it?
Oh, so let's take that two-part question. I'll take the first part. What is customer success? I think, to answer it glibly, it's actually something which is quite misunderstood. There's a guy of Asian origin called Chen Zhou, who was one of the first, I think the first 12 employees at Salesforce, and went on to found a company called Zuora. Very successful company. He wrote a book called Subscribe, which I would also, should be the second book you read after mine. Okay. And Chen puts in that book, and I can't remember exactly, but he says something on the lines is, we tend to meet each new challenge by creating a new department. And that's what we've done with customer success on the whole. And I think that's where most organizations make a mistake. Do you need specialists? Yes, you do. But I think what I learned in building my SaaS company is that customer success that's the vehicle through which you deliver value to customers is something that pervades the whole organization. So my definition of it is everything your organization does to profitably, because that's an important piece, win, satisfy, retain, and grow. So it's not just about post-sales, it's about the whole customer engagement lifecycle. Your chosen customers. So it's about being very purposeful about who your customers are, and by definition are not. Better than the competition. And by competition, actually, the biggest competitors that I find that SaaS companies have are not other SaaS companies. It's other ways that customers can spend their money. It's other things that they think are priorities. It's other activities that they've got to spend time on. So it's that totality, and it was trying to get my head around what that meant, which led me to write the book. In terms of how they measure it, this is something I cover in the book. The customer success community is a great community. And there was a meeting in the Bay Area in the States quite a few years ago now, where people were asked, how do they measure customer success? And the things that came out top of the list were things like logo churn, the number of customers that we lose, net revenue retention, gross retention, net promoter score or customer satisfaction. And these are all very important measures and the things that you should measure. But when I saw that list of a measure of customer success, my first thoughts were, none of those are measures of customer success. Right. They're all measures of our success. And what we don't do enough of in this thing called customer success is actually get down to figure out, what does success mean for the customer? So how do we measure the value that we deliver to them? And that should be the first thing that is on our customer success dashboard. How much value are we adding to customers?
And how does one get to know that in a quantitative way?
You talk to customers, you listen to customers, you watch customers. The answer is, it's a lot of deep, meaningful research. Surveys are probably not the answer. You've got to really get to talk to them, understand. So you've got to get inside the skins of the people that you are selling to and who you are servicing. And you've got to understand, what are their challenges? What work do they have to do? And how are they measured? And by starting to really understand that in depth, then you start to get to, well, if that's how they measure that, if that's how they think they are measured, that's probably going to point us to how we should be measuring the value that we add to them. So value in that context, MD, is a little bit like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. It's not something that we create or craft. It's just a case of, really getting to know them properly and saying, if I improve this metric for you, if I improve this piece of work for you, does it make your job easier? Does it make you more successful? Can I make you a hero?
Yeah, interesting. And you actually talk about the fact, and you mentioned it as well, saying that notion needs to be pervasive throughout the organization. Everybody must be thinking about it kind of the same way. is it really as easy as it sounds? I mean, you take a 1,000 people organization, somebody who's just read your book and said, I want to make sure everybody in my organization, I want to make them think customer success first. How does a CEO go about doing this? Especially, pretty much every company, as you rightly pointed out, is siloed.
Sure.
In fact, most companies have a team called customer success team, right?
Correct. And they are a very necessary team. My premise is that they are not the only team that's involved in delivering value to customers. So the other thing you said is, how does a CEO go about it? And you hit the nail on your head there, MD, by saying it's a CEO responsibility. Because if you go back to this concept that what we're talking about is something that pervades the whole organization, the person driving that has to be the person that's responsible for the whole organization. And the mistake that we make in many organizations is we say, look, here's our vision, go off and implement that. But unless we keep bringing people back to that vision all the time, of which how we measure value to customers has got to be a core part, unless we keep bringing people back to it, individual teams will develop individual solutions. So what ends up, what starts out as being a company vision ends up becoming very fragmented. So the CEO's job all the time is to constantly be saying, how does this relate to how we're adding value to customers? How does this relate to how our customers are measuring value for themselves? And that's his or her role. Keep bringing it back to that all the time. Is it easy? No, it's not. I've done this recently with an organization where I was operating as an interim. The fundamentals, understanding what you need to do is not difficult. But the research of getting under the skins of customers, figuring out what success means to them, is hard work, which I suspect is why not many companies do it, and those that do don't do it particularly well, because we don't like hard work. Measuring net promoter score and measuring net revenue retention is easy because we've got all that data. Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, let's do that, but let's not do that because it's easy. Let's not lose sight of what we actually need to do, which is the right thing to do. So we've got to focus much more on doing the right thing, measuring value as customers perceive it, not just the easy thing. How do we perform?
Yeah, and
it will take months, MD. It's not something you could probably do overnight. Yeah. You can kick it off quickly. You can get a first view quickly. And the way that I went about it was, we literally got everybody in a room. We got all the leaders of all the different parts of the business together and said, okay, well, who are we serving? What does our ideal customer profile look like? What's the profile of the people that we're talking to? Yeah. And you unpack that, and then you start to unpack it a bit more. So you can get a framework together in a couple of days. It's then going to take you some time to populate that.
Yeah, I'll come to the customer profile a little later, because I want to hold on to this thought of, again, getting it across the organization. My concern really is that, I think naming nomenclature is kind of important because it's very visible. When you find teams called customer success teams, the first reaction to anyone is, oh, it's that team which worries about it. It's hard to kind of make it pervasive as soon as you start label somebody customer success team. Isn't that so?
Yes, it's very much so. Yes, which is, I think you can always find the companies that are going to be good at that, because you listen to the CEO and what she's saying, and she'll be saying she'll be saying it's not just about one team. She'll be saying it's about what the whole of the organization does. And then, of course, she won't just be saying that, because one of my favorite quotations about leadership, and I do love quotations, is, I cannot hear your words for the action that thunders above your head. So it's not just what the person's saying, it's what the person is seen to be doing. And find the people that are saying the right things, then dig around and see if they're doing the right things, then the chances are you found the right sort of CEO. And by the way, not everybody gets it. And I do say to people, if you're working for a CEO that really doesn't get it, find another job, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And
organizations are shadows of their leaders.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. Completely agree with you on that. Now, do you have any example of somebody who's made this happen? to find that one metric which applies across all their customers, which is a measure of customer success. Because as you said, it's hard work. I mean, I can't even think about the steps I will take if I was running a SaaS company to kind of figure this out, other than getting people into a room.
Yeah, the answer is, MD, it's never one measure. Okay. Everybody loves this one measure. And it's like what we've got with organizations and with, in dealing with customers, we've actually got very complex systems. And in my experience, you can never understand the performance of a complex system by looking at just one thing. And it's a bit like if you got on an aeroplane, when we used to do those things, because we don't do it quite as often as we used to do now, but when you got on an airplane and the pilot, gives his briefing to the passengers and says, today I'm going to fly the airplane, but I'm only going to use the altimeter. I'm not going to look at any other instruments. I mean, I get off that plane very quickly because he's got a complex system and he needs to know fuel, he needs to know direction, he needs to know speed, he needs to know, radar, what else is around the plane. So the people that say I'm looking for that one measure are probably people making a mistake in the first place. And the other reason it's a mistake is because we're not selling to individuals. So we're not selling to one thing. We all talk about the customer, where actually one of the principles in the book is it's about people, not customers. So if let's take our sponsor, Freshworks. Who buys Freshworks? Well, maybe there's somebody that's a chief customer officer or a CEO, or maybe a chief marketing officer that's going to sign the order. That's going to say, yeah, I'll put budget behind that. But they're not the people using it very often. There's lots of people using it, and the people using it in sales, and the people using it in marketing, and the people using it in customer success all want completely different things from what effectively is a product. Yeah. So we've got to get into the habit of thinking about and starting to understand measures at what does MD want out of this? What does Renil want out of this? What does Disha want out of this? What does David want out of that? And if we focus at that level, then we've got a slightly better chance of understanding that and a slightly better chance of measuring that, and therefore a better chance of delivering against that.
Fascinating. And would that, you said absolutely, I agree, the CEO needs to drive it. Probably a kind of a cross-functional team to kind of figure this out, I guess. That's what, let's say, Freshworks decide to do something like that. The CEO got people into a room and then they go out and kind of figure this out, come back and say, okay, here are the things which we need to, as a company, kind of think about and look at. And I guess the other complexity is also many SaaS products are sold to different industry verticals. So the industry verticals themselves may have differences and you need to factor them in. Isn't that so?
It is very much so, yes. So you have got this complexity, but in a way, breaking that complexity down, understanding not just the industry verticals, but maybe the maturity of the different companies and the individuals that we're seeking to serve and what they're trying, by actually bringing our focus down to a granular level, we make it easier to find the meaningful metrics. It only really becomes difficult when we try to find one or two numbers that apply to everything. So yes, is it complex to break it down? Yes, but actually that act of breaking it down simplifies the task.
Right. In fact, my first thought also is to, as you rightly pointed out, to think of one metric, but it's not really so. You need to get down, the devil is in the detail, maybe construct from that. Maybe I'm a one metric kind of a guy. I think that way because it's just simpler for me to think about. Maybe I should kind of create an index out of it or something which aggregates it, perhaps, to make it more digestible in my head at least.
Yeah, when we come to thinking about metrics, I've always followed a fairly simple equation. A times Q equals O. Activities, what we do, times quality, how well we do them, leads to outcomes. So if we figure out what outcomes are we trying to drive, then we can start to unpack that and say, okay, well, to achieve this outcome, I need to do these things to this level of quality. That becomes my measurement framework. Now, I might be reporting outcomes because that's the top level piece that everyone is interested in. But there's another great analogy. I suspect quite a few people listening are fans of either cricket or maybe other sports. And if you're a cricket captain, and the things, if you look at the scoreboard and it says, we're in trouble here, he won't change the score by looking at the scoreboard. He changes the score by changing how the game is being played on the field of play. Correct. He changes his bowlers, he changes his field positions, he changes his strategy. And that's the mentality we've got to get into. Yes, let's look at the scoreboard, but by driving it down to quality and activities, they can start to say, well, actually, this bit's not working. Okay, let's move them, let's add another slip.
Yeah, right.
So you get down to things where you can actually make a change. And if that doesn't work for a couple of overs, then maybe you try, okay, well, let's put third man instead of an extra slip. Is that working for us? Let's change from a spin bowler to a pace bowler. Let's change from a pace bowler to a seamer.
Sure.
To change the way the game is being played.
Yeah, and kind of impact the outcomes, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's a great analogy. Great analogy. Now I'll come to what you had kind of briefly mentioned earlier, the customer profile, or what you call in the book the ideal customer profile. I know you've talked about it at length in the book, but just give us a quick overview. Give us a teaser on this now. That'll be nice.
Yeah, thank you. So ideal customer profile is very simple concept that you are unlikely to be successful by trying to be all things to all people. So what you do as a founder and as a CEO is you figure out what problem are we solving and who are we solving it for. An ideal customer profile is very much around the who are we solving it for. Now, in my book, there are 3 elements to that profile. The first, and the bit that most companies do and do well, is they figure out who are the target companies. Are we targeting finance companies, manufacturing companies, SaaS companies, health companies? What does that look like? Are we targeting companies that have got a particular problem type? So are we looking at a horizontal market rather than a vertical market? Are we perhaps targeting companies that have got a certain size? So we figure out, who are the companies that are most likely that we can most likely deliver some form of value to. And then we start to say, okay, well, if it's those companies, go back to this concept of, I'm dealing with individuals. Who are the key people in the key roles? So I talk about role profiles. So we've got the target companies. Second piece is the role profile. Who are the people that make the buying decision? Who are the people that are going to influence that? Who are the people that are going to use our products and services? Who are the people that may be going to use some of the output, the data, or other aspects of our products and services? And this gives me their role profile. And for that, I need to know, what job titles do they have? What's the core of their work? What are their major challenges? How are they measured? Where do they turn to for help and advice? Because the more detail I can get about that, the more I can start to say, actually, to make them better at their job, I need to do these things. And the third piece, which is a piece that often gets missed completely, is what I call situational factors or triggers. So what is it that, I might have the right company, I might even have the right individual, but unless they're in the right situation, they may not be willing to buy. And it's all about context. So for example, I'll give you a little challenge, a little question, MD. I meet you on the street and I say to MD, you've got a choice. This hand here has got a ticket for the national lottery, which is guaranteed to win a huge prize, a life-changing sum of money. Okay. Or you can have this, which is a Mars bar.
Which is a what?
Which one would you like? A chocolate bar.
Oh, okay.
Chocolate bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can have a guaranteed lottery winning ticket or a chocolate bar. Which one do you want?
I'll take the chocolate bar.
Well, then you're strange, because most people would think, because then I can buy. Well, this is guaranteed winner.
I said that intentionally, yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, most people take. Now, I meet you, same me, same you, same lottery, guaranteed winning lottery ticket, same chocolate bar, yeah. Except we're no longer on the streets in the city in India. We're in the Arctic, not far from the North Pole. You've been there for 3 weeks. You haven't eaten for 17 days. You are 4 days from any form of civilization, any source of food.
Yeah.
Which one are you going to choose now?
Absolutely, the Mars bar. Yeah.
Yes.
Because the other one doesn't
And
make
so,
sense at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So again, it's just a way of describing context makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So the situational factors is what is the context in which MD is more likely to make a decision favoring using my product, buying my product. So we've got target companies, role profiles, situational factors. And I think the more that we build up a really deep understanding of those, I think we equip ourselves better to sell more successfully and buy. You know, Chris, there's a guy there's a CEO of a SaaS company in the video space called Wistia. And he talks about selling and providing customer success is not vastly, it's both are about helping the individual. It's just that one, we're helping a prospect, the other one, we're helping a customer, a paying customer.
A paying customer, perhaps. Yes. I get that. Which actually brings me to the other very interesting thing, right? Which talk about, actually, you describe that cycle very well. You call it see, try, see value, try, value, and then buy, as against the traditional see, try as a demo or something like that, and then buy and then see value. I thought that was kind of beautifully described in your book. Walk us through that again, because does it make selling easier then? Because you're avoiding IT for sure. I mean, you're not going to the IT guy. You're going to the person who's going to derive value from the product.
Yeah.
So does it make selling easier?
Well, yes, is the answer. I believe so. There are a number of things wrapped up in that. So the concept of see, try, buy, I'm not sure he invented it, but one of my co-founders, Andrew Walker, we used this phrase when we were trying to build out the acquisition process at ClickTools. So C was get people to come to our website and have a look at what we do. And then we'll give them a free trial. They can try it. And if they like the free trial, and we'll work to help them, make this trial look as if it's, delivers success for them. And then they'll buy. But what's happened since, so if you go back, this is, we founded ClickTools in 2000. Back then, most of the people buying, it was a company, it was a team. A lot has changed since then. So now we've got this situation where a lot of people buying are just individuals. It's you, it's me. I'm buying because I've got a need right now. It's not corporate IT. It's not the marketing department. It's MD, it's Dave. So that changes the rules of the game, because actually I don't want to buy it unless it's going to work for me. So this is where you go from see, try, buy to see, try, literally try, get value. And if I get value, then I'll buy. If I don't get value, I'll go somewhere else.
Correct.
And this realization came to me when, probably lots of people, I'm downloading apps all the time from Google Play or the App Store. And it's like, when I download these apps, do you know what's odd? I'd never get a call from a CSM. I just use it. And if it works for me, I'll use it some more. And if it works really well, then probably I'll convert to become a paying customer. If it doesn't work, I'll just delete, gone.
I know. So, I do it all the time with my Apple apps. I know exactly what you're saying. But what happens in more kind of, larger, let me say more kind of secure corporate environments, where it's not possible for you to really kind of try something outside your network for security reasons? How does it work there? Because finally you sell to a company.
Well, I think a couple of things, MD. I think a lot of people say that not having tested whether some sort of trial or freemium or low cost option is possible. I hear lots and lots of people say, we can't do that because our product's too complex. To which my response is, why did you build a complex product?
Good question. Yes.
And so they're looking at that through the lens of, this is where we are now. By the way, your competitors aren't looking at through that lens at all. They're looking at saying, look at those idiots over there building this really complex product. I'll solve the same problem in a simpler way.
Yeah.
So they're going to remove some of that complexity. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that even if you do have something which has to be bought on an enterprise basis, I think what you've got to do is you've got to bring that concept of showing, explaining, communicating value to the individual into the sales process.
Mm.
So as a friend of mine, he runs a podcast out of the Bay Area, a guy called Bill Cushard, and the podcast is called Helping Sells.
Mm.
And the tagline that it's got is helping sells, but selling doesn't help. But I think what the best SaaS companies are doing now is bringing that helping piece right into the sales process. It's the core part. So this concept of value across the entire customer lifecycle is very much at the marketing and sales stage. How can I help MD navigate the buying process? How can I give him the tools to say, this is going to help my organization, it's going to help you, it's going to help you, it's going to help you, it's going to help you. So we bring this whole concept of value for the individual, and we build our sales messaging and our marketing messaging around that. So this thing called customer value, measurable customer value, becomes the red thread that goes right through the company. And I have got this premise that at their heart, B2B SaaS companies aren't complex. They're difficult to build, but they're not complex. All you do is you figure out how your product is going to deliver value to certain people, and then you make sure that you communicate that value in your marketing, you communicate that value and show that value in your sales, your product delivers that value, and anything else, customer success and professional services, enables that value. It's that red thread. And that's why value to customers, measurable value to the individuals that buy and that we service, is the red thread that runs right through the whole design of your organization.
Sure. I also noticed that you're not a fan of this term customer journey, are you?
No.
I could make that out.
Well,
no, I love the concept you bring out in terms of saying that, every individual can have a different journey, and they can kind of, what you call, maybe you should talk through that, because I can't explain it as well as you've done it, where you talk about value elements coming in.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. So one is, I think understanding the customers and their challenges at different points in time is important. I think the mistake we make, and by the way, I've made that mistake. I wouldn't do it again, but I've made that mistake of saying, right, we get a customer and we do this with them, then we do this with them, and then we do this with them, and then we do this with them. And actually, when you look at customer journeys, they aren't customer journeys. They are journeys that we would like to take a customer on.
Yeah.
So they're our view of what we think the customer should do. Now, the problem with that is when you get down to individuals, it's not one journey, it's 5 journeys, maybe, with a decision maker and some influencers and some users. And, even users, go back to Freshworks, how many different sorts of users have Freshworks got? Each of which requires it. So we spend all this time trying to build out these journeys. And then as Mike Tyson says, that he said, it refers to boxing. And Mike Tyson said, the problem with a plan for a fight plan is the first time you get punched in the face, it falls to pieces. Well, we try and draw people through these fight plans thinking, why are you doing what you're telling you to do? So my concept is go back to breaking it down. So if I have built this rich understanding and I've got some really good data, which is why data is absolutely core to successful delivery of value to customers, then I say, okay, I look at this data set and say, based on that data set, here's a couple of things you could do. And by the way, here's a couple more. I say, you can do one of those things. Oh, by the way, choose. What do you want to do? Because I'm more likely to do something if I choose to do it rather than you tell me I'm going to do it. So there's a psychology element to it as well, MD. So customer journeys just don't work. We put huge amounts of time and effort into them. They're valuable in 2 contexts. One is at a very high level, where we're trying to figure out at a high level what value means across this journey. And the second is they're valuable at a very, very low level in terms of a user experience when I'm actually interacting with screens. In between, I don't think they work.
Yeah, so
they're more
really
effort than they're worth it.
Yeah, so what you're proposing is that really at every step you give people options. That's what you're saying, right? I mean, based on whatever possible kind of routes they can take in the path, you give them options. But giving options has its downside as well, right? I mean, some people kind of want you to go through, like, for instance, if I'm installing something, I don't want an option. I want the damn thing to be installed.
Yeah. So I think the answer to that is, and there are two things at play there. One is, and this is where the psychology of it all comes into play. One is if I give people too many options, they're like, rabbits in a headlight. They just freeze. Psychology tells us that too much choice is a problem for us because we're not wired to do that particularly well. It's got nothing to do with intellect. It's not something we like to do. And the second thing is, some people do want that. So I'm not saying that you never say to people, here's what you should do next. But you should always give people perhaps 2, maybe 3 options and explain why that's the right option. Now, presenting those options is key, because if you present the wrong options, which is why you have to have a very data-rich basis on which you're presenting those options. And by the way, it's not just about saying you should do this next. It's about saying you should do this next, and this is why, and this is how. So effectively saying what you do, why you do it, how you do it. So what, why, how is a very powerful framework for setting out. And so most people say what and how, and miss the why.
Yeah, you're telling the customer, if you choose this, this is what you'll possibly get. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of calling it out.
Correct. You're going back to value as they perceive it. You're selling benefit and value rather than feature and activity.
Yeah, I know a few people are watching this live session. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box and I'll ask David the questions. I'm going to talk for another 5 to 10 minutes. So, come up with your questions before that. The other interesting thing which I found in your book is that segmentation. Most SaaS companies segment based on MRR.
Yes.
You have some interesting thoughts around that.
I think it is downright dangerous.
Why?
Now, so the model in SaaS, and I spoke to I know Dan Steinman well, it's in his book, and that this model of high touch, medium touch, low touch, or tech touch is suggested. I know Dan says, because I've had the conversation with him, well, that's our view. The problem is, here's how it plays out. You look at a group of customers and say, right, they're spending this much money. We've got to give them this high touch service. And then from that basis, you then design your high touch intervention strategy, your high touch journey. Oh, these people aren't spending very much. We can't afford to do much for them, so we'll give them this low touch customer journey. The problem with it is that bears absolutely no relationship to what customers actually need, which is what segmentation should be about. Segmentation should be, how do I identify a group of customers that I can take a similar action to?
Right.
And this came to me out of real pain. So I think it was about 2000, started ClickTools in 2000, spent a bit of time figuring out what we were going to do, started to sell, got product market fit, and our average order value was around £12,000 a year, about 1,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we landed one of the world's largest fast-moving consumer goods companies. And they bought our product, which is around feedback and surveys. And their annual bill was about 150,000. So 10 to 15 times our average order value. And we thought, we've got to look after these people. We've got to give them this white glove service. And we quickly designed this really intense intervention strategy so that we'd be in touch with them, every week or every fortnight, and we'd give them everything we could. And about a few weeks into the deal, probably a couple of months, I got a call from the decision maker, said, Dave, I've got to tell you, this is not working. We love the product, it's great, but you are content us so often, we haven't got time to do our job. Please back off. If you don't, we'll have to cancel.
Wow.
So, so what did I learn out of that? Well, actually, this company is recognized for being best practice at lots and lots of things. It's been around a long time. And it didn't need all the help. It knew what it was doing. It was good at what it was doing. And they could probably actually taught us quite a few things. But we got this in this mindset because of this model, high touch, high spend, got to be high touch. Doesn't work. The other thing is, if you actually go and do a real analysis about, because what we talk about with low touch is this long tail of customers.
Mm-hmm.
We've got lots and lots and lots of customers that are spending a little bit compared to the relatively few spending a high amount. If you actually look at the value of the cohort, so if you aggregate the value of all those low touch customers, quite often they're spending more than your cohort of high touch customers.
Sure, yes.
So even the math doesn't work. So we confuse segmentation, interventions, which customer journeys, and affordability. Do you have to be able to afford the service you're providing? Yes, to a group of customers. Not, you can afford perhaps one customer to be spending a little bit more with and another to be spending less, but provided you have a model of delivery or models of delivery, which enable you to make a margin contribution on that book of business as a whole, that's affordability. Doesn't mean that you have to have every individual customer aligned to what their spend is. So this whole thing about, customer journey, segmentation, affordability, I think got conflated. And I think as a result, we end up doing the wrong things for customers. And by the way, really, if we are hiring customers that we can't afford to deliver service to, really can't, then the problem is not on being able to afford delivering service to them. The problem is acquiring them in the first place. Yeah. So part of the ideal customer profile is, can we afford to service this customer? Right. So it's a bit more complex.
Yeah, related question. I know this is very common practice that, for your high value customer, those who are spending a lot of money, you need to give them an account manager because once again, the thought is you need somebody not necessarily high touch, but available quickly. Is that a good way of thinking about it, you think? Because you're actually throwing a resource into it just to say, hey, I have somebody waiting for you, even if that person is not doing too much.
I think the answer to that question is simply yes. But if that's the only thing you're doing, you're probably not going to be as successful as you could be, because you can have a model which says, I'm going to be delivering a lot of intervention based on need. So this is the data piece again, based on what we know that works, and I can deliver that proactively. But yeah, if you've got a problem, by all means, let's have the ability for someone to contact us, and they will do. So is a reactive inbound motion only the right thing? No, I don't think it is. It is having some sort of intervention strategy driven by data, driven by choice as a primary vehicle, much of which might be digitally delivered.
Yeah.
Not all. Backed up by, if you get stuck, we're here to help. Yeah.
Yeah, which brings
and go on.
No, go ahead. You finish your thought.
It's just that the world is full of examples, MD, where people have said self-service won't work. So you go back to, I think it was the 1800s when the first vending machines were introduced. People said they won't work. You go back to cash machines. Most of the people in banking said it won't work. Why will people stand outside in the rain to get their money when they can come in and talk to somebody inside? Supermarkets, self-service tills won't work. Even cash tills where you pick your own groceries and bring your trolley up to a cash till. People said that wouldn't work. Why would that work when you can come to a shopkeeper and he and she will help you get everything you need? The world is full of examples of where people say self-service won't work. By the way, most of the people who say it won't work are incumbents in that business already. They're trying to protect their way of life, their approach, their ideals. Often.
We have fascinating examples on that, right? That's a topic by itself, actually.
Indeed.
Final question, David, which is teams get feedback from, maybe inbound, people call, or through the intervention mechanism you talked about. How does one think of prioritizing? Because you can't do everything which comes in. How do you prioritize? Then let's say the next feature set or the next, set of things which you need to do to your product to deliver, value, which is coming out of your feedback mechanism.
Yeah. So in terms of feedback around product, I've got a very particular point of view, and that is nobody in the organization should ever tell product what features a customer's asking for. Never.
Okay.
What we should be telling product is, these are the biggest problems that customers are reporting to me. Now, the reason that we don't do features, and again, it's bitter experience. I remember back at ClickTools, we had a session at the same time that the Salesforce show Dreamforce was on. We had a customer session, and one of those was, about product roadmap. And we said, look, here's a list of 20 features that we've been asked for. Which one do you want? And they said, oh, they want that one. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And the problem's twofold. One is adding a feature based on that's the most requested doesn't always mean that's going to be the most valuable to them.
Right.
The second is people can only express feature requirements with the knowledge of technology that they've got at the moment. So what I advise everybody to do is never tell product what features you want. Tell product what are the biggest challenges that your customers are facing and what impact is it having on them being able to do their job.
Right, which also means, by the way, the front line, which is actually getting these quote unquote feature requests, need to learn to ask, not listen to just a feature request, but ask the question in terms of what problem will it fix for you, Mr. Customer. Is that right? That's a skill in itself, I think.
It is indeed a skill, and it's a skill, I think, I call it value discovery, and it's got lots of uses, but one of them is around what problems are we not addressing at the moment, which if we were to address them well, would help you most. So I do think we've got to equip people in sales, in marketing, in customer success, in product particularly, although they're probably better at it than most already, not universally, to do, to uncover challenges and value gaps, as I call them. Because then a good product team can take that and say, oh, right, well, we could address that challenge in these 2 or 3 different ways. There's some new technology coming down the line that would help us do it this way. That would give us not just great value, but also give us competitive advantage. So I'm always looking for, I have this concept of what I call and answers. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they're given a choice. They say, well, actually, you can do that or that. It's the or question. Would I want to increase price or increase quality? And I have learned, I can't remember where I picked this up, but someone said to me, Dave, don't always reframe the question. The question is, how can I have a low price and high quality? How can I have a great feature and serve customers better? It's like, always look for, where you get that and answers. And the value of that is it actually forces you to think a little bit more deeply. It's relatively easy to make this trade-off, that or that. But to find an answer which suits both conditions, I've got to get my mind working. I've got to be a bit more creative. I've got to think deeper. Absolutely. I've got to know my customers better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's part of it.
Absolutely. Fascinating. I think we can keep talking forever actually on this. It's a As I said, it's a wonderfully written book, David. So congratulations again. By the way,
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, I think, from the audience. So how long did it take you to write the book?
Longer than
I'm curious. Sorry?
Well, longer than it should have done. I'd started to form the ideas about the book probably a couple of years ago. And when I started to think about it, MD, my audience was going to be the customer success leaders and people. And I shared some of the early thoughts about the book with a friend of mine, a guy called Rav Dhaliwal. He's now an investor. He was in customer success, but he's now an investor. And he said, I think his comments were, David, there's some really great ideas in the book, but you've got the wrong audience. Because the only people that can make the sort of choices and do the sorts of things you're talking about are CEOs.
Yeah.
So I took back and I didn't change the nature of the ideas fundamentally, but I wrote it for a different audience. So it's now advice to CEOs. And
Yeah.
Rav was right. Rav was, as always, he often is. He was right.
Cool. Great. That's
the answer
great.
is 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. I can't wait for the next one to come out. I think this is Renil. I mean, you heard all of that, right? You guys need to have everybody, I think, in Freshworks read this. At least the senior management, I think, should look at this. I loved it, and unfortunately for me, it was a very fast read because I had to be prepared for today, and I started reading it 2 days ago. But it's great. I want to thank David. Thank you for taking out of time your afternoon on a Thursday, and Renil and Freshworks. Thank you very much for supporting this event. And there you go, Renil. Thank you for putting that up. I got my copy of the book through Amazon Kindle. There was only a Kindle version available, I think.
Yeah, I looked at that, and I think that's due to Amazon do basically print on demand, so they probably haven't got the facilities. But on this slide, I've also put the link to Amazon.com where you can also get the paperback.
Yeah, cool. And once again, thank you. Before I hand over to Renil, I just want to let folks know that for November and December, we are not going to have it on the usual last Thursday of the month. We are advancing it because of the holidays coming up. So just want to let you know that. So thank you once again to everybody. This recording of this will be available in a couple of days' time, as well as just follow us on LinkedIn. You will get all the wonderful snippets of this conversation, which David and I have had. Look forward to those snippets because I can already think of around 10 coming out of this conversation, David. With that, thank you very much. And Renil, over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks, MD. Thanks, David. This is indeed a very insightful session, and I hope people find value, like you said, MD, through the snippets. All right. So once again, thanks everybody for joining in on a Thursday evening. Like MD was saying, our next session is on the 18th of November, and the speaker is Ed Benak. He's the Chief Customer Officer at Cocentric. So look forward to that session, and thank you, David and MD, once again.
With that. Okay. Thank you. Good night. And
Thank
good
you. Good
evening,
night.
David.